Hello everyone. Today is 24th of April. Now it's about 3 o'clock in the afternoon Moscow time, and this is second news update for our Patreon and Boosty communities from Krasnopesninsky district, Moscow. And as you see in the beginning, dear friends, already some preparations are underway for celebration of victory in a great patriotic war on 9th of May. And right now we are entering a nice looking park that I personally have never been into, and let's go for a little walk in this area. And meanwhile, while you will see some background, I will go through some news on some major topics that Russian media and public is paying attention today, at least since this morning. And now let me turn the camera for a sec before I go through. There is also a monument there. And as I said, nice looking park for sure. And so let's go through some news now. And as I did in previous times, probably I will publish first part or some short episode from this update on YouTube and Rumble, and as advertising, so that I hope members of our bigger community on these platforms will consider to join us on Patreon or Boosty. That will be great support for my work and this project, of course. Oh, nice puppies, by the way. I have to show you. I have to show you. You know. So, yes, dear friends, if you are watching this video on YouTube and Rumble, please yes, if you are watching on YouTube and Rumble, please consider to join our community on Patreon or Boosty, where I have quite a lot of extra content, second updates, and other stuff. I'm trying to, make as much content as as a demonstration of how grateful I am for support on these platforms. And so yes, let's go through some news now. And I'm going to start with the report from TASS news agency that Russian forces established control over the Bogdanovka settlement in the DPR. And when this information broke, there was some confusion because there is a few Bogdanovka settlements in the DPR. One is on Chisov direction, another on southern western flank of Pokrovsk-Mirnograd direction, and many outlets reported that this settlement that was liberated is on Pokrovsk sector. Other media outlets reported that this settlement is on the Chisov direction. Some confusion there, but in any case, this report is about progress of the Russian armed forces on line of contact. And well, one big media outlet reported that this Bogdanovka settlement that was liberated is on Chisov area. So I guess that is the case. For tomorrow, there will be more clarity on that. And of course, I will report about it in tomorrow's first update. Also, dear friends, we have reports about fierce fighting that is going on right now in the Gornal settlement. Also, TASS news agency is reporting about it based on its sources in security services, and Russian troops clearly are trying to liberate Gornal as in short time, as fast as it can be done. Although, of course, main thing is to make sure that there is as minimal casualties as possible. And by the way, it's just too hot, really. Where is my hut? Okay, okay. And so, yes, fierce battles are taking place for Garnal, and I would not be surprised at all if Kiev regime and its NATO backers will demand from troops that are Kiev regime's forces that are located in that area to maintain their presence there, no matter how much people they're gonna lose. At least before 9th of May, to somehow distract celebration of Victory Day for Russian side. But I think this is not possible, even if Kiev regime will try as much as they can. Russian troops most likely will liberate Gernal in next several days, despite the opposition from the enemy side. Also, dear friends, Russian armed forces, as I reported this morning, conducted a relatively large-scale, long-range missile and drone strikes on military and logistical infrastructure of their Kiev regime last night. No, I need Ань, можешь. And we have some additional information on that. Just let me take a cup and then I will continue. Let's continue. And so Russian Defense Ministry today issued an update on these strikes. I have some detailed information on that, so let's go through this news here. The Russian armed forces have launched a massive missile strike on Ukrainian military enterprises. The Defense Ministry reported tonight the armed forces of the Russian Federation carried out a massive strike with high precision, long-range air, land, and sea-based weapons and unmanned aerial vehicles against the enterprises of their aviation, rocket, and their space mechanical engineering and the armored industry of Ukraine, the department ministry said, basically. In addition, facilities where rocket fuel and various types of gunpowder were made in Kiev controlled territory was destroyed also. And defense ministry is noticing that all the targets were reached as a result of these strikes, and we have good reason to believe in that, because today number of high-ranking representatives of Kiev regime were actually complaining that due to lack of air defense systems, they were unable to intercept as many aerial targets as they would like. And let me show you, dear friends. Probably you recognize that skyrise. It's Moscow city there in that direction. And so, yes, some more news on this night long-range strike that Russian armed forces conducted. Also, we have this important news about potential provocations, bloody provocations that Kiev regime, with assistance of its NATO backers, may conduct in upcoming days. So the entourage of Vladimir Zelensky is discussing the possibility of a high-profile provocation that could derail negotiations on resolving the conflict in Ukraine and undermine US peace initiatives. This was reported by Vladimir Rogov, chairman of the Public Chamber of the Russian Federation's Commission on Sovereignty Issues and the co-chairman of the Coordinating Council for the Integration of the New Regions. Many members of our community are familiar with Vladimir Rogov, of course. He is on a regular basis informing public about developments in the zone of special military operations. So according to him, the Kiev regime is preparing a bloody provocation in order to disrupt negotiations on the settlement of Ukrainian conflict. This was reported by RIA Novosti. He noted that such a scenario is being discussed in the circle of Vladimir Zelensky, in inner circle of Vladimir Zelensky. What else? Rogov specified that the provocation could be committed both in relation to Russian regions and in the post-Ukrainian space under the control of Kiev authorities. According to him, the goal of such a action is to blame then Russia and shift responsibility for a possible escalation of this conflict. So some serious warnings from Rogov, and I guess he has a good enough reasoning to make such a statement, to make such warnings. And after all, it's not just Rogov, but recently, excuse me, recently Russian security services also made somewhat similar warnings about possible provocations that Kiev regime and its Western backers may commit. So therefore, I guess Russian security services are, ready for anything, basically, to make sure that society is safe and secure here in Russia. They are working 24/7. So therefore, hopefully, whatever provocations Zelensky's regime is planning, together with British secret services, French secret services, hopefully they will fail in that. Also, interesting statements, by the way, from former Russian Defense Minister Shoigu. We have a report on RT with the headline that NATO forces in Ukraine could trigger World War III. So the deployment of foreign troops to Ukraine could lead to clash between Russia and NATO and ultimately to World War III. Sergei Shoigu, secretary of Russia's National Security Council and former Defense Ministry, has warned the term peacekeepers is being used as a cover for the true objective of establishing control over the Ukraine, according to official, which is true, by the way. Obviously, these NATO member states are in no position to call peacekeepers their troops, isn't it? It's just total nonsense. Everyone understands this, but time after time, London, Paris, they are coming up with these statements and they are trying to mislead the public in the West that they are talking about some peacekeeping force, when in reality this is not a peacekeeping force. This is basically expeditionary force that they are talking about, that might be sent into controlled territory for occupation. That's what it is. And to eventually, and to end up in direct clashes with Russian troops and maybe to provoke wider war. That's what Western ruling class possibly wants, wider war, so that they will force US to stay in this conflict. Let's go through some more details here. In an interview published on Thursday by TASS news agency, Shoigu, who previously served as a Russian defense minister, stated that the presence of foreign peacekeepers, so-called peacekeepers, on Russian historical territories could provoke a direct confrontation between Moscow and NATO, potentially escalating into a third world war. According to him, this risk is acknowledged by the reasonable politicians in Europe. Yes, it is true. There are just a few, by the way, reasonable politicians in Europe, and yes, they are acknowledging all these risks, but unfortunately these politicians, in many cases, maybe with the exception of Hungary and Slovakia, are not in a position to influence, to have a more or less significant influence on developments or the policy making of these Western countries. The term peacekeeper, Shoigu went to say, is being used to mask the true objective of gaining control over Ukraine territory and its resources, Shoigu believes. He argued that it would be more accurate to describe such a force as invaders or occupiers, and yes, I mean, I guess everyone would agree with that, right? In no circumstances, these troops that potentially could be sent into Kyiv-controlled territory by the so-called coalition of willing, in no circumstances they could be called peacekeepers. It's total nonsense, isn't it? Which way to go now? Okay, let's go directly towards the Moscow River. Meanwhile, dear friends, I'll give you a few more news. Shoigu also stated that Moscow reserves the right to use nuclear weapons in the event of aggression by Western countries. So in November 2024, amendments were made to the fundamentals of the state policy of the Russian Federation in the field of nuclear deterrence, according to which Russia reserves the right to use nuclear weapons in the event of aggression against it or the Republic of Belarus, including with the use of conventional weapons, he said. Russia, according to Shoigu, is closely monitoring the military preparations of European countries. In accordance with the national security strategy of the Russian Federation, in the event of foreign states commit unfriendly actions that pose a threat to the sovereignty and the territorial integrity of the Russian Federation, our country considers it legitimate to take symmetrical and asymmetrical measures necessary to suppress such actions and prevent this kind of actions to be repeated in the future, he said. And this is, of course, yet another, I will say, strong warning from Moscow to this coalition of willing and to collective West in general, because they should keep in mind that any action that coalition of willing might take against Russia, including deployment of these so-called peacekeepers, may be seen by Moscow as a direct threat to Russian Federation, direct threat to security of Russia, Russian citizens, as a direct threat of transformation of this conflict into a wider war. And in that case, Moscow will and should, and most likely will consider some preemptive measures to be taken, and there are potentially not just with conventional weapons, but also with non-conventional, like nuclear weapons, right? And after all, that's why some changes were made in 2024 in Russia's nuclear deterrence strategy. And I really hope globalists and their puppet regimes in Europe will listen to these warnings. And the situation will not escalate in the way that Moscow will have no option but to deploy really strong force. Let's hope so. And well, let me turn the camera, by the way, and show what I see right now. We are getting closer to Moscow River. Some massive construction site there. And let's continue with some more news. And next is report from RIA Novosti, dear friends, on this very topic of Ukrainian crisis and possible deployment of NATO troops. That maybe these warnings from Russia's side did actually work, and some people among globalists and their puppets in the governments in Europe are start listening. Maybe, just maybe, but Times reports that following the talks in London, the European coalition of the willing is reviewing plans to send so-called peacekeeping force to Ukraine. We have quotes here. Keir Starmer and the French President Macron. Keir Starmer is, of course, Prime Minister of UK. So Keir Starmer and French President Macron are offering to send troops to Ukraine to keep their peace as a part of a coalition of willing, but that commitment appears to have softened during talks in London, sources told the Times. As the newspaper notes, some officials are worried that Russia will consider the British-French mission one-sided and will not accept it. Although Times is also writing that according to their military source, London is not ready yet to completely abandon plan to send its troops to Ukraine. So this topic of further escalation with Russia and widening this conflict into a regional one is still there. So despite all the warnings of Moscow, and not just by Moscow but from other capitals also, despite attempts of Washington to distance itself from globalists and the countries in Europe that are controlled by the globalists, seems like not everyone in Europe are realizing dangers of the game that they play, including with their potential escalation with Moscow, and therefore topic of deployment of French-British contingent into Ukraine is still, I guess, relevant, although Times is acknowledging that that pressure is weakening on London and Paris on this subject to send their troops immediately or in foreseeable future, which is somewhat positive, but unfortunately there still are some psychos in European elites that want further escalation and wider conflict, and they might provoke one still. So therefore warnings from Shoigu, latest warnings from Shoigu, definitely make sense. Definitely makes sense to somehow incentivize globalists and their puppets in European governments to be a little more careful, because I don't think they are ready for what might come if they will provoke Russia to take really strong action. They definitely are not ready for that. Let me once again show you, dear friends, what I saw. We are on the bank of the Moscow River, and I guess this is a former Ukraine hotel, right? Now it's a Radisson. This building is one of the Seven Sisters, by the way, so-called Seven Sisters, that were built during the Stalin era. Being building of Moscow State University is, of course, part of this complex of 7 buildings. Little far away, you can see building in a similar style that is a foreign ministry, building of the foreign ministry of the Russian Federation now. This way, there is some massive construction. I have no idea what is going to be there, but something quite massive. And this side, this way is Moscow city, of course, and some skyscrapers, office blocks, basically. So yeah. Yes, I know. There is it's not just office blocks, but also apartment buildings for rich and ultra rich, I guess. And there are plenty of such people, isn't it? After all, recently, if you remember, dear friends, I reported that Moscow is on the second place, if I remember correctly, with the number of billionaires that live in the city.
Hello everyone, if you find this video informative and interesting, please click that like button, leave some commentary and share with your friends.
If you want to support my work, you can do it through several means. All the links are on this video in the description box and in the pinned comment. And if you want to have access to full show, please consider to subscribe to my Patreon and Boosty pages. Thank you.